The silence here is strange, almost suffocating. It wraps itself around the abandoned wing, a kind of stillness that doesn't just fill the air, it presses against you, makes you aware of every breath you take, every shift of your feet. There are no sounds of life here, no footsteps echo down the hall, not even the sound of whispers that you'd expect from a place like this. Just quiet, the kind of quiet that feels heavy with secrets buried beneath years of forgotten history. I've been in places like this before, where time seems to move differently. It feels like it lingers in the corners, stuck between the peeling paint and the decaying walls. But here, the quiet is different. It's as if the walls themselves are waiting for something, for someone, for an answer to a question no one dares ask. The air smells of mildew, and the faintest breeze carries the scent of something long dead. It doesn't feel like a place that was once alive. It doesn't feel like a place that ever belonged to anyone. And yet, I can't help but feel the weight of what happened here, the memories, the lives, the people who once called this place their home. And as I walk deeper into the wing, the floors creak under my feet, as if they remember something I can't. I should leave. I should turn around and never look back, but I can't. It's as if this place is calling me, whispering my name in the windless air, pulling me deeper into its heart. I know this wing, I know its rooms, and I know the sound of the old elevator that creaks to life every time it descends from the top floor. It's all familiar to me, too familiar. But there's something new tonight, something I can't put my finger on. I stop in front of room 215. It used to be one of the worst rooms. Back when the asylum was active, the door is slightly ajar, a thin sliver of darkness peeking through. I can't see inside, but I know what's in there. Or at least, I think I do. My name is Sarah, I'm 34, and I used to work here as a nurse. I spent 7 years of my life in this place, 7 years taking care of patients who were nothing more than forgotten souls wandering through their days, trapped in their own minds. But even now, after everything, I can't forget them. I can't forget this place. I left 2 years ago. I left because I couldn't take it anymore. The constant hum of the lights, the eyes of the patients always watching me, the way the walls seemed to close in on me every time I stepped into this wing. I left because I was losing myself, because the weight of the past was too much to carry. But I didn't leave it behind. I thought I had. I thought I was free. But tonight, I'm back, and the moment I stepped through the door, I felt it again. The pull, the quiet, the watching eyes. I walk through the wing, my footsteps loud in the emptiness. The rooms on either side are dark, their doors locked and still. I used to check on each one of them, every night. It was routine, like breathing. I'd check the patients, make sure they were asleep or comfortable. But now, the rooms are empty, silent. But then I hear it. The faintest sound, footsteps, too light to be my own, but steady. It's coming from further down the hall, from the direction of the old therapy room. I stop, listening. I thought I was imagining it. I thought maybe it was the building settling, like it always does. But the sound continues, a soft shuffle, a step, another step. My heart beats a little faster. It's too late for anyone to be here. The building is closed. I'm the only one here. I feel a chill run down my spine, but I can't stop myself from moving forward. The sound is getting closer now, closer and closer, and then, just as I reach the end of the hallway, I see her. At first I think it's just my mind playing tricks on me, but then she turns her head slowly, almost too slowly. Her face is pale, gaunt, her eyes hollow and empty. She's standing in the doorway of room 215, looking straight at me. It's her, a patient who had died here a year ago. I remember her well. She was one of the ones I couldn't save, the one I watched fade away, day by day, until her body finally gave in. But she shouldn't be here. She shouldn't be standing in that doorway, staring at me like that. I take a step back, my breath catching in my throat, but she doesn't move. She just stands there, watching me with eyes that seem to see right through me. I want to speak, to ask her what she wants, but my voice won't come. I feel a weight settle over me, like a blanket made of dread. My hands shake, but I force myself to turn away. I can't stay here. Not now. I'm losing my grip on reality. She's not real. She can't be. She's dead. But as I turn to leave, I hear it. Her voice faint and soft but unmistakable. Sarah. I freeze, my blood turning cold. She knows my name. She's been dead for a year, but she's calling me. She's calling me from the darkness, from beyond the grave. I don't look back. I can't. I run down the hall, the sound of my feet slapping against the floor, echoing through the empty space. But the footsteps behind me don't stop. They follow me, just out of reach, always just behind me, never too far, but never close enough for me to catch them. I don't stop until I'm outside, but even now, as I sit here, I can hear them. The faint sound of footsteps, echoing in my ears, always behind me, always just out of reach. I don't know if I'll ever be free of this place, and I don't know if I ever want to be. The mirror hangs in the corner of the room, cracked along its edges, but still reflecting the dim light from the hallway. It's a strange thing, how mirrors can hold the truth, yet lie all at once. I've always found it odd, how you can stand in front of one and see yourself clearly, yet the longer you look, the more something seems off, like your reflection is a little too distant, a little too foreign. It doesn't feel like you anymore. I used to stand in front of it every morning, trying to put on a face that would carry me through another day here. But after years of looking into that cracked glass, I began to wonder, was I seeing the reflection of the person I used to be, or something else, something lost? The light flickers, casting long shadows across the room, and I feel it again, the weight of the silence. It presses against my chest, tightens my throat. I haven't been able to shake it. It's been with me since I left this place. It's always been here, but now, it's heavier. The hallway outside is quiet, save for the soft hum of the fluorescent lights above. It's like a sound that doesn't belong, like something that shouldn't be there, but has settled in anyway. Every corner of this building feels wrong, like it's trapped in a moment of time that no one can escape. The wallpaper is peeling, the tiles chipped and cracked. The once white walls are now a sickly shade of yellow, and the air smells faintly of antiseptic and mildew, the two scents blending together in a way that makes the whole place feel suffocating. I don't know why I came back. I told myself I would never return after I left 2 years ago, that I had escaped for good. But here I am, standing at the edge of the old nurse's station, staring down the hall that I used to walk every day. I can still hear their voices in my head, the patients, the ones I cared for, the ones I failed. They linger in the corners of my mind, just as they linger in the corners of this building. I hear their whispers, soft and distant, like echoes from a place I can't quite reach. My name is Linda, and I was a nurse here for 15 years. I was the one who would walk the halls at night, checking on the patients, making sure they were comfortable, making sure they weren't slipping away in the silence. But that was before everything changed. That was before the hospital became something else entirely. The first time I noticed it, I thought it was just my imagination. It was late at night, and the only sound in the hall was the soft shuffle of my shoes against the floor. I was walking down the hall to check on room 315, a room that had always felt different. It was the room of a patient who was known for talking to people who weren't there. She would often speak about things that didn't make sense, stories about a figure in the corner of the room, watching her with eyes that burned. I didn't believe her, not at first. I thought it was just her illness speaking, but then I started to hear the whispers too. At first, they were soft, barely audible, like a distant murmur from the other side of the world. But as I walked down the hallway, they grew louder, sharper, as if something was following me. I would turn around, expecting to see someone there, but every time I looked, the hallway was empty. The whispers became more frequent, more insistent. I started to feel as though I wasn't alone, even when no one else was around. It was as if something was watching me, waiting for me to acknowledge it, but I couldn't. I refused to. But the thing is, it didn't stop. The whispers kept coming, and then the shadows, shapes that didn't quite belong, began to appear in the corners of my vision. I would catch them out of the corner of my eye, figures moving just beyond my reach. They were never clear, never fully formed, but they were there, always there. And then came the mirrors. I don't know when it started exactly, but I remember the first time I saw her. I had just finished my rounds, and was on my way to the break room, passing by the old staff bathroom. The door was slightly ajar, and I saw her reflection in the mirror, just a glimpse, a pale face, with hollow eyes and lips that moved as though they were speaking, but no sound came out. I froze in the doorway, my hand hovering over the doorknob. I couldn't look away. I thought I had imagined it. I thought maybe the exhaustion was getting to me, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I had seen her, that I had looked into a reflection that wasn't mine. The next night, I saw her again. This time, it wasn't just a fleeting glimpse. She was standing in front of the mirror, her hand pressed against the glass, as though she was trying to reach me. Her eyes were black, empty, void of anything human. I didn't know who she was. I didn't recognize her from any of the patients or staff, but I knew she was real. She was in that mirror, staring at me, waiting for me to acknowledge her. I couldn't escape her. Every time I looked into any mirror, there she was, watching me. Sometimes she was far off, like a shadow lurking in the distance, and other times, she was standing right in front of me, so close I could feel her breath on my skin. I stopped looking into mirrors. I stopped looking at my reflection. I thought if I avoided it, she would go away, but she didn't. She stayed, always watching, always waiting. Then one night, it happened. I was walking through the hall when I passed the old staff bathroom again. The door was wide open, and the light inside flickered, casting long, trembling shadows. I didn't stop. I couldn't. But then I heard it, a voice, soft and breathless, coming from inside. "Help me," it whispered. I didn't know who it was, but I knew I couldn't go in. I didn't want to see her again. I didn't want to face whatever had been lingering in the mirrors for so long. But then I heard it again, louder this time. "Help me, Linda." It was her, the woman from the mirrors. She was calling me, and I knew deep down that she would never stop. She was tied to this place, and so was I. I don't know why I stayed as long as I did. Maybe it was the guilt, maybe it was the silence, but in the end, I left. I walked away from this place, from the mirrors, from the whispers, but even now, when I look into the glass, I can see her reflection. I can hear her voice in the back of my mind. "Help me, Linda." Dandelions pushed through the cracks in the concrete, like small rebellions against silence. The courtyard was once meant to be a healing space, a garden of peace surrounded by the cold geometry of the asylum's brick walls. But now, vines smothered the benches, and no one came here anymore. It was too still. Stillness like that doesn't feel sacred, it feels watched. My name is Joseph. I'm 58 now, and for most of my adult life, I worked here as a groundskeeper, not a nurse, not a therapist, just the guy who made sure the hedges stayed trimmed and the flower beds didn't become graves for weeds. I was never trained in mental health, but I came to understand it in my own way, quietly, by watching, by listening to the place breathe. When I started, Back in 91, the central courtyard was a focal point of the hospital's therapy program. Patients would be escorted out in groups, some in wheelchairs, others just shuffling slowly, arms tucked into coats even on warm days. The nurses called it nature exposure. I called it a temporary illusion, like putting a painting in front of a broken wall. It looked hopeful. It wasn't. I was in my early 20s then, angry at the world, bitter from a childhood spent in a different kind of institution. The asylum, as strange as it sounds, felt familiar. Rules, routines, unspoken pain behind every door. So I stayed. The years blurred, staff came and went, and I remained trimming, raking, and pretending the place could still be beautiful. One section of the garden always stood out to me, a gated-off path, surrounded by rusted iron fencing and a stone archway that read Therapeutic Sanctuary. It had been closed for decades. Long before I arrived, ivy covered the gate, and no key was ever found. The older staff whispered about it, called it the locked garden. No one really remembered why it had been sealed off, only that it had been, and that no one should try to get in. I didn't ask questions. I had my routines, but something changed the year before I left. Something began to shift in the garden. It started with the smell, not rot, not flowers, earth, deep, wet, ancient earth, like something buried far too long was beginning to breathe again. At first, I thought it was just the season, spring thaw maybe, but it didn't go away. It thickened. Then came the humming. Late at night, long after the patients were returned to their rooms, I would pass by the courtyard on my way to the supply shed. That's when I'd hear it. Low, melodic humming, like someone humming a lullaby through water. It never came from the open part of the garden, always from behind the locked gate. I told myself it was wind, then maybe a patient's echo carried through vents, but the humming had shape, cadence, sadness. One night I broke. I stood at the gate, flashlight in hand, trying to peer between the vines. My breath fogged in the cold. Even though it was late May, I leaned in close. The humming stopped. That silence, pure, sudden, total, felt worse than the sound. And then, I heard footsteps behind me. Turning quickly, I found nothing, no one, but the air had changed. It was heavier now, as though the courtyard itself had drawn a breath and held it, waiting. I should have walked away then. I should have turned and told the head nurse or filed a report, or just ignored it, like everything else we ignored in this place. But I couldn't. The next morning, I came in early. No patients were scheduled for garden time, and I had an hour alone. I brought bolt cutters from the tool shed and made my way to the locked gate. The metal groaned as I snapped the chains. Vines scratched at my arms as I pulled them aside. The gate creaked open. Inside, the air was different, colder, quiet. A circle of stone benches surrounded a single tree in the center, gnarled and leafless. Beneath the tree lay a rusted wheelchair, tipped on its side, half swallowed by moss. I don't remember how long I stood there, only that I felt wrong, not frightened exactly, just unsteady, like I was standing in someone else's memory. That's when I saw her, at the edge of the garden, near the overgrown hedge wall. A woman stood with her back to me, pale dress, long dark hair. She wasn't moving. I called out, softly, unsure whether she was real or some leftover dream, but she didn't turn. I approached, slowly, unsure of my voice, unsure of the world, but before I could reach her, she walked forward and vanished behind the hedge. I ran to where she had gone, pushing branches aside. Nothing, no trail, no footprints, no space behind the hedge at all. That night, I couldn't sleep, not because of fear, but because of guilt. An image burned itself into my thoughts. The wheelchair, tipped over and abandoned, the circle of benches, the stillness of her back. I couldn't shake the feeling that the garden wasn't just forgotten. It had been sealed away for a reason, and I had let it breathe again. Over the next few weeks, patients began to mention dreams, always the same. A tree, a circle of stone, a woman humming by a hedge. None of them had been told about the locked garden. That part had remained hidden. Staff complained of headaches. One nurse quit without notice. The air felt heavier each day. I tried to reseal the gate, but the vines wouldn't grow back. Nothing covered it. The entrance remained open, no matter how I tried to disguise it. One morning, I came in to find the courtyard empty. Dead leaves had filled the paths. The tree inside the locked section was now in full bloom. Pale white flowers with petals like paper-thin skin. That was the last day I worked there. I left quietly. No goodbye party, no exit interview. I packed up my tools, turned in my badge, and walked away. Now, years later, I still dream of the garden. I see the tree, I hear her humming, and every time I look too long into a patch of woods or a forgotten alley, I feel that same pull. She was never trapped. She was waiting, and I was the one who opened the door. Dust doesn't float in the dark. It clings down here, below the asylum. Time doesn't pass like it does upstairs. It drips, slow, cold, metallic. Every sound carries like a secret that doesn't want to be overheard. My name is Mason. I'm 64 now. For 16 years, I worked as a maintenance technician beneath the Ridgeway Asylum. Not many staff even knew the full extent of the vent system and tunnels below the building. Fewer still volunteered to work down there, but I didn't mind. I liked the quiet. It was simpler than dealing with people. I started in 1997, after my wife passed. I wasn't doing well then. I needed a job that didn't involve much talking or light. The agency said Ridgeway was short-staffed, and the previous tech had left suddenly. I didn't ask why. At first, it was just basic upkeep, filters, ducts, water lines. The tunnels connected the old therapy wing, now sealed off, to the newer sections. You could hear everything through the vents: conversations, crying, pacing footsteps in the middle of the night. Over time, I stopped noticing, until I did. The shift came slow. I remember the first time I realized something was off. I was in one of the crawl spaces, replacing an air duct. That's when I heard whispering. Not above me, not carried down through the vents, but right beside me. Close. Too close. I paused, held my breath. The whispering stopped. I chalked it up to fatigue. Long hours, stale air. But it happened again and again. Sometimes I'd crawl into a section I'd visited 100 times and find something changed. A vent cover unscrewed. A valve turned the wrong way. At first, I blamed the other techs, but I was the only one assigned to the tunnels. A few months later, I started hearing the laughter. Not playful, not innocent, just a single breathy chuckle, like someone was hiding, amused, watching me fumble in the dark. It always echoed down the longest corridors, where the lights flickered and the walls wept moisture. One day, during routine inspection, I found something new. A vent panel had been pried open near the disused hydrotherapy chamber. Inside, someone, or something, had carved dozens of tiny symbols into the metal. Not words, not pictures, just spirals, circles, endless repetitions of the same pattern etched deep into the aluminum. I reported it. Admin said it was probably a patient who had wandered off during repairs. That explanation didn't sit right. To reach that tunnel, someone would have had to crawl through 3 locked checkpoints, and I was the only one with keys. I started sleeping less. When I did manage to drift off, I'd wake in cold sweats, certain someone was whispering into my ear. I'd turn on the light. Nothing, but the whisper would still echo in my mind. You left it open. There was no explanation, of course, not one I could tell myself, and still keep coming to work. But I did. I kept showing up, because part of me, some cracked part I didn't want to examine, needed to know what was hiding down there. That obsession led me to the South Wing tunnel, sealed for decades. The old intake records mentioned something called the observation corridor, but the door had been welded shut. No entry, no maintenance logs, nothing. One night, long after the halls above had gone still, I stood in front of that door with a crowbar and a flashlight. My hands were shaking. I didn't know what I expected to find. Maybe nothing, but the silence behind that door felt heavier than any I'd ever known. It took me 20 minutes to get it open. Rust screamed as the bolts gave way. The metal groaned, not like an object being moved, but like a breath being released. Inside, the air was thick, not just dusty, dense, like walking through a fog of memories. The corridor was narrow, barely wider than my shoulders, with glass panels on both sides. Observation rooms, small, sealed chambers. Some still held broken furniture, old restraints, crumbling paperwork. But that wasn't what stopped me. One of the rooms was lit. A single flickering bulb buzzed above a metal chair, bolted to the floor. I stared into that room for what felt like hours, not because of what was there, but because of what wasn't. There was no door to that chamber, no entry point, just walls and glass, as if the room had always existed solely to be watched. And then I saw the chair move. Only a fraction, just a tilt, but it moved. I stepped back. My flashlight shook. A chill ran across my spine, like an unseen hand tracing each vertebra. I didn't hear the laughter again. Not then. I heard breathing. Slow, deep, not mine. I turned and ran. I didn't stop until I reached the ladder that led back to the main floor. I filed no report. I told no one, but I sealed that door again. Welded it shut myself. I used 3 layers of steel and poured concrete over the seam. I didn't care about protocols anymore. The weeks after that were worse. Every time I entered the tunnels, the vents whispered, not words now, memories, my memories. I'd hear my wife's voice, saying things she never said. I'd hear footsteps matching mine exactly, echoing just a half beat behind. One night, I awoke in my apartment to find dust on my sheets, the kind of fine gray dust that only collects in vents. My windows were closed, my door was locked, but something had followed me home. That was when I quit. I didn't write a resignation. I left my keys on the desk and walked out without a sound. I don't go near buildings with basements now. I live in a small cottage above ground. No vents, no crawl spaces, but it doesn't help. Sometimes I still hear it. The breathing, not from outside, not from within. From the walls, from the spaces that shouldn't have voices. Once while replacing a bathroom fan in my new place, I pulled off the grate and found a small spiral carved into the drywall behind it. I painted over it. I never told anyone, but I still check the vent every morning and every night, just to see if the spiral comes back, because if it does, I know what it means. It means I left something open, and it's still watching. Light moves differently in room 209. It enters late, lingers strangely, and leaves as if it's retreating from something. The window doesn't offer a view, only bricks, red and rotting, pressed up, like the world forgot to leave space for breath. My name is Eleanor, but most people call me Ellie. I was a resident care aide at Havenhurst for 9 years. Mostly I worked the evening shifts, tending to patients who couldn't or wouldn't sleep. I'm 53 now, retired. I didn't leave because of age or health. I left because of one room, room 209. It's still there, I'm sure, though I haven't gone back to check. Tucked in the far east corner of the upper floor, past a hallway few others ever had reason to walk. The room wasn't dangerous, not officially. Not in the way the locked ward was, or the seclusion units downstairs, but the staff kept it empty whenever possible. It wasn't haunted, not in the way people think. No cold spots or flickering lights, no screaming or moving chairs, but no one stayed there long, not even the strongest patients. When I first started, I thought it was just superstition. Older staff whispered about bad air or heavy shadows, things I thought were just the worn-out fears of people working too many double shifts. Then I met Mr. Levon. He was transferred to our floor after a short stay in emergency psych. Paranoia, insomnia, dissociation. He'd been found wandering a closed department store parking lot at 3 a.m., barefoot and muttering about walls listening. He was thin, pale, quiet, kept his hands folded, and his voice low, but he wasn't violent, and he didn't resist treatment. The only thing he requested, begged, really, was to have a room with a window. We gave him 209. It was the only available space with a window at the time, even though that window looked out at nothing but the brick backside of the demolished West Wing. Still, it counted. At first, he was calm, sat in the old armchair near the glass and stared for hours, never asked for books or television, just the chair, the window, and the light that barely reached the floor. A week in, he started talking, not to us, not at us, just softly toward the glass. I'd pass by during rounds and hear him whispering, not prayers, not nonsense either, just questions. Why are you still there? Are you going to blink today? I asked him once who he was speaking to. He didn't look at me when he answered, just said, the girl, she watches me. I tried to redirect, asked what girl. Maybe it was a memory, I figured, a daughter, a sister. He just shrugged, she's in the wall. After that, he grew anxious anytime we tried to move him, or even clean the room. Once, when the nurse brought in fresh linens, he screamed, loud, sharp, full of panic, because she stood in front of the window for too long. He said she was blocking her view. Eventually, I stopped entering unless I had to. I'd talk to him from the doorway. He wasn't aggressive, but he'd grown distant, empty-eyed. His meals came back untouched. One night, during a storm, the power flickered, and all the hallway lights cut out. I had a flashlight, but it barely pierced the dark. I went to check on each room in order, saving 209 for last. The door was ajar. The light from my flashlight spilled in, and for a second, I saw him, not in the chair, but standing on the windowsill, hands pressed against the glass. I rushed in, heart pounding, and pulled him down. He didn't fight me, didn't say a word, just sat back in the chair, eyes wide, staring into the bricks. As I turned to leave, I glanced at the window. There was no reflection, not of him, not of me, nothing. That detail still gnaws at me. I told myself the angle was wrong, that the storm distorted the glass, but mirrors don't lie, and windows should reflect something. The next morning, he was gone. I don't mean discharged, I mean gone, vanished. No record of his transfer. His name was missing from the logs. The bed was made, the chair empty. The supervisor said I was mistaken, that 209 had been unoccupied for weeks. She even showed me the paper trail, clean, clinical, scrubbed of him. I checked the files myself. There was no Mr. Levon, no intake record, no referral, nothing, like the window erased him. I went home early that day. I didn't sleep. The following evening, I asked to be reassigned to a different hall. They didn't ask why. I think some of them understood without needing words, but I couldn't let it go. I started going back, just passing by room 209 during my breaks. The door was always closed, no lights, no patients, but sometimes I'd stop and listen, very faintly, so faint I almost convinced myself I imagined it. I'd hear breathing, slow, steady, too deep for the silence of an empty room. And once, only once, I heard a knock. Not from inside the room, but from behind the glass. Just one. That was the last time I went near it. After I left Havenhurst, I thought I'd find peace, but sometimes, in my own home, I catch myself staring out the window too long. Not because I'm looking at anything, but because I'm afraid something might be looking back. And once, just once, I thought I saw bricks where my garden should be. I blinked, and they were gone. Maybe that's how it starts. Maybe the window doesn't need a room anymore.